Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. We are going to be talking about black money today, but 3 or 4 different angles. One is of course the technical, legal and the tax aspect of cracking down on black money, preventing its generation in this economy and thus leading to the Union Budget 2014 that we are going to be having next week. The second of course is to do with the larger political economy and why this gets generated and where it gets consumed and what can be done about that. Joining me on this special Boom News Business Standard initiative is Kumar, Ketkar, well-known journalist, Paranjoy, Guha, also well-known journalist who's done a lot of campaigning on the black money issue, chartered accountant Uday here with me, and Karthik from Deloitte, senior director, who also looks after forensic accounting there. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. So I'll come to the technical part in a bit. Kumar, let's begin with you. When we talk about black money, right, there is something exotic about it as well, because we talk about money which is stashed overseas and so on. What does it fundamentally represent, its existence, and where should we begin?
No, I think obviously it means a lot of unaccounted money, and primarily it was believed, and it continues to be believed, that only political persons have the black money and they keep it abroad. But I personally feel, having been a reporter and talking to many people, that there are many sections in India who have access to generate and keep black money abroad or within India. And they are not only political. They are bureaucrats, the senior police officer, the Bollywood, the cricketer, the bureaucracy, and all kinds of such people who have access. Sometimes some bureaucrats and some police officers or perhaps even military officers would have more black money than the politicians we think they have. But what I consider more important is the political black money invariably comes back into the electoral process. And I have actually seen, while the limit is 70 lakh rupees, I have actually covered elections in last 40 years. And in last 10 years, or last 15 you can say, but last 10 years, the component of black money in the electoral process is huge. I have covered 1971 elections, 77, 80, 84. It wasn't so, quite alarming. It is alarming now. And it is particularly last 15 years.
There's a demand-supply equation which has gone completely.
I think not only demand-supply, I think for last about 15-20 years, the movement to unearth black money started. So I think many of the politicians started spread out, and that spread out of the black money perhaps came back to India, and that was used in the elections because everybody realized that it is the political power, even to bureaucracy or to military or to police. The political power protects black money, patronizes black money.
So would you say that that's the largest component and thus the driver of this whole generation of the black money or the unaccounted money?
No, that's an administrative. System? If you are saying administrative, yes. If you are saying only political, no.
From a demand side?
Yeah, but if you are saying it is administrative, absolutely right. But if you are saying it is political only, that is only politicians, I totally disagree.
Okay, fine. We'll come to the solutions in a moment. Uday, let's get your sense on why this is happening and what is the administrative technical failure here. Then we'll come to the solutions and the budget.
No, so essentially, as I think it was mentioned, black money is the money which has been accounted out of business, but you not pay taxes essentially. Right. And that is arisen traditionally because the tax rates in India were very, very high. If you look at early 70s, and of course after that, tax rates have gone down substantially. But at one stage, the tax rate was, I think, some 93%, 97%, and with the wealth tax, it could go to 102%. Right. So that I think is another extreme. But from there we come a long way. As recent as a few years back, also it was more than 45-50%. Today the tax rate is 30% for individuals. And this is one key issue why people do not want to, those who don't want to pay taxes because of whatever reason, be it the infrastructure or we are not getting the services back as taxpayers, and so that money gets accounted and that becomes black. It's more a parallel economy, essentially to the fact that they have not paid taxes on that, and there is accounting, and that's a parallel economy as we have been talking.
So you're defining it as the non-payment of taxes as opposed to, let's say, the illegitimate and the ill-gotten wealth.
So this may be absolutely out of the legal business, but you're not accounted for it. So it's not drug money or trafficking or that. It's not in that sense an illegal money. It may be perfectly out of the legal business, but you're not accounted. So a lot of proprietors may be doing business. The turnover is not accounted as an example in the books. So that turnover, the profit is not accounted accordingly. And so that money would be perfectly a legal money, legal business, but not paid taxes. So it is a black money.
And what's the one reason in your mind that we've not been able to capture this effectively given our current, let's say, tax administration systems today?
I think it has arisen and accumulated over years and years. Okay, and then people have parked money, maybe as per the reports, maybe in Switzerland, Swiss banks, and all kinds of monies abroad. So it may be out of the money business generated in India or outside India.
May I ask a supplementary?
Yes.
A small supplementary. How many countries in the world have the quote-unquote problem of black money?
I think it is a problem, I would say, universal in many parts of the world.
United States and European countries also will have black money?
United States would possibly not have. Some parts of Europe certainly would have, because we've seen amnesty schemes in Germany on a regular basis as an example. US had at one point of time, not in US anymore, but certainly parts of Europe have. Switzerland is one economy where,
Right, but the US also, you had a crackdown with US going after UBS and saying that you better reveal the name of all the Americans who sort of not declared their tax and kept account.
So it is not as if our middle class perception of black money that only India is the country
not at all.
which is corrupt and totally black money.
Not at all. As Govind is saying, US has a system where a green card holder or a tax resident is taxed on a world income basis. And so if any US resident has an assets abroad on which the income is generated, if that is not accounted, then clearly it's a black money.
Right. Okay, Karthik, I'll just come to you in a second. Paranjoy, let's get your sense. I mean, we're obviously there is a creation of an SIT which is looking at a special task force, which is special investigation task force, which is looking at this issue today. The Prime Minister constituted this recently. There have been a committee set up even under the previous government. So we obviously are all keen to get to the bottom of this, but yet not arriving at a destination, so to speak. Why is that?
Firstly, the government didn't really have a choice. They had to set up a special investigation.
Because the Supreme Court asked them to, yeah.
So if the government hadn't set it up, the Supreme Court would have set it up. So the government did set it up. That's the first point. The second point is, we are looking at clandestine activity. So nobody really knows what is the quantum of that money. You've had dozens of committees that have been set up in this country, and the proportion has varied from 17 or 18% to 15%. So if indeed about half your all the transactions that take place in your economy, I'm just giving a hypothetical example, then our GDP, instead of being 2 billion, it should be 2 billion. And we would have been, a sort of quote unquote developed country instead of a developing country. But the point is, as I want to add to what Kumar Ketkar said, and this whole issue of funding of political parties, funding of election campaigns. Now, people crave that, this 70 lakh limit, which was recently increased, is not adequate. But when you look at the accounts that the candidates of political parties put out, they don't spend this kind of money, because they spend much more, which is not accounted for. Now, because there are two glaring loopholes in the law. First law, whereas there is a restriction on the amount of money that a candidate can spend during elections, there's no restriction on how much a political party can spend on a candidate. That's point one. But the even bigger loophole is that when the accounts of political parties are audited, and usually by their favorite auditors, and not by an auditor appointed by the government or the controller, an auditor general, these auditors, the loophole is that any amount which is below 20,000 rupees, you don't need to explain where this money has come from. You don't have to disclose the source of this donation, so-called donation. Theoretically, if I want to contribute 19,999 100 times to my favorite political party, there's not a damn thing the auditors can do. And my name and my source of funds will not be disclosed. So these are two huge loopholes in the law. The other point I wanted to make, and I think it's a bit of a myth that a lot of Indians, all their ill-gotten funds have been stashed away in Switzerland. I think that used to be the situation some years ago, not anymore. Today, thanks to over 70 so-called havens all to India after being laundered. You have today in stock market transactions, you are participatory notes, so that you don't have to disclose the source of the money. And so what happens is, say a huge amount of money comes into India from these tax havens. Take Mauritius. I've recently been there. I've directed a documentary film on Mauritius. How is it that this small clutch of islands in the Indian Ocean has over the last 22 years accounted for roughly 40% of all the inflows of foreign direct investment and foreign institutional money that's come in? And one reason is, of course, it's good tax planning. But there's a thin dividing line between legitimate forms of tax planning and tax avoidance and tax evasion or money laundering or round tripping. So that's what happens, and as a result of this, and mind you, these tax havens are not just Mauritius. There are dozens of them across the globe. There even within nation states. There's a state of Delaware in the U.S., Florida. There's Monaco. There's Liechtenstein. So all of these mechanisms are there for people to launder their money, and we have a law called the PMLA, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. The way in which it's enforced and the way the enforcement directorate works leaves a lot to be desired. So this is
Paranjoy, let me interrupt you there for a second. And I mean, you talked about PMLA and that the prevention of money laundering, and that's a good point to bring in, Karthik. Karthik, walk us through the structure here that we are talking about from an administrative point of view before we then start talking about solutions and the budget.
So when we talk about, let's understand what the problem is. When we talk about black money, some people talk about tax evasion. Somebody is saying some money has been generated illegitimately and developed. But the first major difference is under PMLA, tax evasion is not a predicate offense. So you cannot prosecute a person for money laundering under a tax just for tax evasion.
Right.
So that's the first biggest difference, number one. Number two is there are certain sectors which are prone in India for probably utilizing ill-gotten wealth. So, for example, you may call it gems and jewelry, you may call it real estate. These are well known and it has been identified by international bodies like FATF that these are pretty prone to money laundering. So, what can you do to first of all prevent? So, that's the Indian problem. How can you prevent? First of all, generation of this illegitimate wealth.
Assuming you want to.
Yeah. Yes, assuming you want to. Yes. And the second is the one which has gone out of India. It could have gone through a banking channel, through over invoicing, under invoicing. There are a number of ways to do it, or through Hawala, this thing. It has gone out of India. How do you bring it back? These are the two issues we are talking about. The problem is when you have to go outside and seek information, let's say from a Swiss authorities or other areas, you cannot go on a fishing expedition. You cannot go and ask, give me the names of all Indians who have an accounts with you. You will have to first establish a case under a money laundering act saying that this is an offense somebody has committed, he has an account with you, and this is the reason I'm seeking information from you. That's when they will respond to you. You cannot go for a general ask for complete information from them, give me all the information, because there may be a lot of Indians who will have legitimate accounts with them, so there's no need for them to share that information.
And they may not have necessarily their names.
Absolutely. That's the second point. The second point is the perception is that when they keep money abroad, it will be in my individual name. It will never be. That's very rarely somebody may be foolish enough to do that. Usually it will be in the name of a trust or a foundation or a company in the name of a corporate asset. So who is the beneficial owner behind that? Unless you are able to identify who the beneficial owner is, you will not be able to lay a direct link to them.
Right.
And that is where there is a difference in the way different jurisdictions identify beneficial owners. That's another problem at hand.
So assuming we are now in a mood to address this issue and find solutions to it. So budget being the first, let's say, the tool to do it.
Sure.
Where do you see things happening, and how do you see things happening there?
Okay. I don't look at a budget for this kind of exercise. Let me say there are
to the extent that let's say earlier you had a move to bring in more services under the service tax act.
Sure.
So therefore, arguably you're preventing the generation of accounted income or unaccounted income and bringing it under the.
Sure. See, there are two things. First of all, let me take a step back. I'll give you. There are certain legislations which have already come into play. So, for example, your Prevention of Money Laundering Act has already been amended to include gems and jewelry and real estate under the ambit of that. So now these people will have to start reporting. For example, if you go and buy jewelry worth 50,000 and above, you will have to start giving your ID information. So the government will start getting those information. They can start FIU, can start analyzing that information for suspicious activity and go after them. So that's at least in the Indian part you are able to take care of, at least contain this menace, if I can say that. The second is your SIT. At least now you have a focused effort. It's monitored by the court. It is also getting all the investigative agencies under one roof. So they will have.
Yeah. So 11 agencies from the Department of Revenue Intelligence to Department of Revenue, Narcotics Control, Financial Intelligence Unit, the whole bunch.
Absolutely.
But their assessments are different. On the quantum of.
Absolutely. So that is the reason. So what will happen is now they will all report to this particular SIT. So there will be focused investigation and it will reach to a logical conclusion. That is my experience. I'm an eternal optimist. So I believe that is one, and there is a clear focused effort. So now people will
and the raw, not to forget.
And the raw, and now you can identify cases specifically and take it to a logical. So you can establish certain cases that this is a money laundering act. Go to international bodies and get that information and prosecute. Will it solve your complete the numbers which are being thrown about in this in the media?
No, so that's the question.
That you may not be able to address everything.
Fair enough. So Uday, that's the question I'm also trying to understand here. I mean, by doing this, are we therefore able to address some larger problems which are fundamentally wrong in this economy and this country? I mean, including the political economy.
So I think I would put it in two parts. One is the money which has been accumulated till today. We can deal with it in a particular manner by SIT and various other issues that we spoke about. Going forward, what one should do. As far as past is concerned, I think certainly the special investigation team will look into it, and integration of various departments will bring the money. And could there be an amnesty? If you want to use budget as an example, could there be an amnesty? Certainly it would be promoting dishonest kind of a behavior, and honest taxpayers are paying.
And this Patra thing did the same thing.
So that's why, sir, the last time when the amnesty was announced was what's called the KVSS, Kar Vivad Samadhan scheme in 97-98. And at that time, I think before that it was maybe done about 10 years back, the last two amnesty. And the UPA government at that point of time went to Supreme Court, finance minister at that point of time, and gave a commitment that we will never ever have amnesty. So maybe that's the past, nothing to do with
that's a governmental commitment. As in this government can, if it wants to, can.
If at all, yes, it can do that. But that would be promoting the dishonesty. One option could be, as I think sir rightly said, we want to bring money into India. Then could there be some kind of foreign exchange remittance kind of amnesty that could be brought in? Because this is what.
So you're saying that we need to do something like this to attract. I mean, you cannot go after it. I mean,
you cannot go after it. The only way you can go after. Let me tell you how you cannot go after it. Switzerland and UK had a treaty about few years back, and they initiated this under which if a taxpayer paid 30% tax to the Switzerland authority and remitted balance, that was treated as an amnesty scheme. So they did not disclose the name and the details, but under Swiss UK treaty, they had an amnesty. So something like that could be done under India's.
Okay, but you're saying fundamentally, don't hope too much to kind of
the only way you can do it for the international money lying in Switzerland or wherever is through the treaty exchange of information clause, and that has failed because you will not just give a general information. You have to dig out individual specific issue, then the authorities will give. Switzerland has refused to give information in mass.
But they gave it to the US, right? Because the US seem to have the ability to tighten the screws on.
But specific cases.
Okay, so you need to be sufficiently armed before you go there, like you said before. Okay, Paranjoy, you had a point on this?
Yeah, I have 2 points to make. Firstly,
quickly,
in the UBS case in Switzerland, there the US tax authorities had very, very specific information, and UBS had no alternative, and the Swiss government had no alternative to give out this information. The problem in our country is that we are reluctant to pass on this kind of information, which is very, very specific. There's big hue and cry about whose names are there because some banker blew a whistle and a whole lot of stuff entered the public domain. And then we found some individuals, including those who had promoted some prominent hospitals in your city, Govind, whose names appeared. And there were people saying, oh, no, we have nothing to do with it. I want to make one other point, and that was this whole issue of this voluntary disclosure of income scheme or amnesty scheme. We've already had 2 such schemes, and we've had a third scheme for service tax. There's a basic problem. In one of the old schemes, there was a huge loophole where you allowed old silver to be declared, and you managed to get away. All of a sudden, lots of people found, their grandmothers had left behind lots of old silver for them. There was some loophole in the law. But what was even more interesting is The basic problem with an amnesty scheme or a voluntary disclosure of income scheme is that it penalizes the honest taxpayer.
Yeah.
It's like a most waiver scheme. I mean, then you say, why the hell? Why was I such a fool that I paid tax all these years? Because now I've got an amnesty scheme and no questions are being asked as to why I didn't pay tax all these years. So I think there's something inherently wrong in trying to unearth black money through these amnesty schemes. And I personally don't think it sends the right message.
Right.
I just had a small point.
And
Only one
go ahead,
small
and
point.
then I'll ask you the question.
That Vikas Patra thing,
Yeah.
I was told by a very senior banker of a major nationalized bank that most of these Vikas Patras, they expected to be sold in say 6 months, 1 year.
Right.
They were sold in 3 months and the quota was exhausted.
So it was
So,
just
I said, what happened? They said, this is all Hawala money, our own money coming back and buying Vikas Patra. Is it true? Is it possible?
The RBI bonds in I think early 80s
Yeah,
or something similar.
This is 1980.
The gold bonds, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
1980.
RBI bonds, yeah.
So, but do you think, and I'm going to come back to you, Kumar, in a moment, but so do you think that we are in a mood to have another amnesty scheme? And therefore, is there a need to have another amnesty scheme?
I would think no.
Okay.
Clearly, I think this government would be a fatal if that comes out.
Okay.
If the government has just taken,
Right.
This thing in 30 days time, and if there is an amnesty, I think it has its own political ramifications.
Right.
So my sense would be, I don't think we are ready for that.
So we are therefore not going down that path, or unlikely to go down that path.
Unlikely.
Right. Okay, so Kumar, let me come to the really fundamental question. What is our current political will to solve this problem? Because this problem links to so many other things, reflects the ability or the government's ability to take hard decisions, the government's ability to clean up the administrative problem that has resulted in the creation of so much black money all these decades.
Well, actually, we saw the campaign of all parties, and particularly the party which is in power now, and that amount of money that they have spent, and how can that money come from where? It cannot fall from sky. So that money, whoever paid, in whatever terms, certainly not it was white. Obviously, it cannot be, because that much white money doesn't exist. I mean, in terms of financing election, and therefore, I think the vested interests will not allow, because the vested interests belong to black money owners, and black money owners also are part of the government, part of the system, part of bureaucracy, part of SIT, who knows. Therefore, I think
but is this
investigation,
to this government, or is this a
no, this is across. I mean, this
this
has been ever since 1980-84. But just I said, between 80 and 84, the amount of money that was spent in elections was less. Now, why it was less, I don't know. Because in 78 to 80, there were all these amnesty schemes, so money was coming. But even then, the expenditure, I can tell you, Govind, that the money we learn from the politicians themselves directly. They talk in private a lot. The monies in some constituencies was spent anywhere between 50 crore rupees to 100 crore rupees. I mean, kind of money, granting that it is exaggeration, how much? It will be at least 10 crores to 20 crores when they are saying 50 crores.
No, I mean, 200 crore plus has been found in cash,
actually,
in cars and vans and so on in states like
I think this money has come back from wherever it was kept. It was not necessarily perhaps in Swiss banks. But I have just a small question, is that all the money that we see getting spent in huge marriages and functions, can't there be something like expenditure monitoring?
So that's clearly, I think, clearly there's a monitoring, and the use of technology. I think more and more government going into the IT-enabled kind of an option will lead to this kind of situations. And today also, forget the wedding, but you spend more than say 2 lakhs on a credit card, or you spend some money on hospital bills.
But that's been there
No, but
also.
that's been there.
Chidambaram has also talked about it.
No, but IT-enabled thing and integration of various
No,
departments.
but that will be
certainly
recorded. That will be recorded if I spend cash
Yes.
and have a huge function in Marine Drive, which often there are.
Yes. And
how do you account for that?
No, but I think that's the government has to track that, and you're right. I think so. That's an universal problem.
No, so therefore I'm saying, if assuming we are in a mood to do things which we've not done before, and the budget being the first immediate tool, are we in a position to actually start cracking down on some of these things? Like, I mean, we can do all the 1/6s and so on, but that's really cracking down on something that's already accounted for, or can be tracked down.
See, today government is clearly in a position to do something because it does not have any political pressure, a clear majority. So I think it will also be seen how we look at the SIT, and they start putting the result may not come in 1 or 2 months. It will take its own time. But certainly a political will.
And is there anything specific that you would now articulate from a budget point of view, from a tax moves point of view, which would address some of this?
I don't think anything specific except the amnesty is the only part which, if at all one wants to, think it's a forget the past. We will bring
but from
money.
an efficiency of tax administration or regime?
No. So one thing which has interestingly happened, not necessarily linked to the budget, CBDT, Central Board of Direct Taxes, has just come out with an action plan, a 96-page paper on 30th June, few days back. It talks of how they will ease tax administration, how will the amounts of tax be collected, and in response, what should taxpayers' expectations are. One of the aspects they've sneaked in somewhere is in connection with it doesn't say black money, but in connection with that, where they've said that, look, if a tax officer is finding something during the tax scrutiny which is fishy and he does not believe it, then he can ask those relevant questions more from an international taxation perspective, asking specific cases on an exchange of information, maybe learning from the Swiss example that you can't ask the en masse information, and also any amount. This is more from a cross-border perspective, not necessarily from a local perspective. If there are any specified tax havens, as an example, Cyprus has been notified as a tax haven today. So any money paid to a Cyprus entity is not deductible. So I think you are putting a pressure on the Indian payer not to deal with this kind of entities. So those kind of things, they said they've been specifically being told, and they will be judged based on how much the results
so this
are
is
being.
More corporate entities or individuals or both?
It can be both.
It can be
both.
Okay.
Can there be something like IRS?
Sorry?
IRS in United States?
Yeah, I was just coming to that. Actually, we were talking about the Swiss incident where probably US armed twisted the Swiss authorities to get this information.
But the bank,
but we have to learn a lot from the US as well. They have shown us the way. They have come out with a new regulation called as FATCA, Foreign Account Tax Compliant Act. Now they are forcing all financial institutions across the world to share information of all US persons who has an account with them. Okay, because they will be able to collect all this information, analyze it, then they will compare it with their tax, whatever is being filed with them, identify if they have not declared any income, and then go after them. So what has happened is, across the world, all countries have learned from this. I'm going to give information, let me also get this information. So under OECD, they have formed a group. So they are probably this year they will have some standards which they are.
So you're saying that the global trend is also towards greater
correct, but
transparency.
The difference
sharing,
here is that in this the sharing of information will be on an en masse basis. So India, if it is a signatory with a bilateral agreement, let's say with UK or a Mauritius country, you will give all information of all the tax all the information of individuals with the tax residency which you have identified in the financial instrument. Most of them are covered, which you will have to share with them. So they will get a complete list of information. Similarly, India will also get this information. Then you can analyze and go after individuals easily. So this fishing expedition which you are talking about, that you won't require probably once you start getting this one, but it's not now. Probably it will take a couple of years.
But you're saying it's all coming together. Okay, last few words. Paranjoy, let me begin with you. We've got this is supposed to be a pre-budget build-up. We are trying to understand what we can do in the budget which can address this fundamental problem that's been plaguing the Indian economy and polity for decades.
Okay, 2 points. But before I move to the budget, I just want to add to the point that has been made about how internationally today there's greater awareness about the way these tax havens work. The G20 countries have been talking about it. The same developed countries which had actually encouraged the establishment of these tax havens are today saying, no, that's not so good for the economy, especially after the Great Recession of 2008. And the OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, which is really some of the most developed countries in the world, they have started a very interesting initiative called BEPS, B-E-P-S, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, which looks at how some of the largest corporations in the world, including Apple, how they are trying to, the whole dividing line between evasion and avoidance, legal forms of avoidance and evasion. I think this is being looked at far more carefully. I'm not so sure whether in the budget Mr. Arun Jaitley can do anything about this problem. I mean, people have been talking about expanding the tax net for donkey's years. I mean, just look at the facts. At one level, you have Forbes magazine saying, so many Indians are dollar billionaires and so on and so forth. You have 33 million income tax assessees, and that's 3% of a population of 1.2 billion. And out of these 33 billion, about 2/3 of them don't have a choice because they are salaried employees and their tax gets deducted at source. So you talk about widening the tax net and having a more rational system, a better administration. Even some of the BJP people said we've had tax terrorism, we must stop tax terrorism. But really, time alone can tell whether the government is really serious about doing anything about this problem.
Right. Okay, Uday, last word. What are the tools that the current government has? What can it actually employ or deploy?
On the black money.
Black money, or if you want to extend that discussion to a larger case of bringing in more people into the tax
So
net.
certainly, I think expanding. I think we said enough about black money. I would say we'll leave it here. But certainly on the expanding of the tax net, there is absolutely a case. And I think as you know, we just discussed, hardly 3% of the population is under that. So certainly bringing more and more people under a tax net.
By doing what? What was the one thing that...
Keeping the tax rate under control. Okay. So I think 30%. So
don't increase it.
No increase. Keep it at that level. A better compliance will drive the process. And the taxpayer.
But can you incentivize? Is there something more we can do?
So the taxpayer should get more and more comfort that the money that I'm paying as tax, I'm getting in return. So I think infrastructure, social security, and that again will be a period of time how the taxpayers will get the comfort. But that's how I think people pay in the US, right? Because
they see a return.
In the US, the effective tax rate is 45% for an individual with a social security tax, but everybody is paying it, right?
Most people are paying it.
Most people are paying it. In Europe, the tax rate is more than 50-55%. In Germany, in France, and people are paying it because possibly they are getting in return for the social security, your retirement, and the infrastructure. Today, I think that's why people are not paying it. It's only a matter of time. That
maybe you're saying, so after all these decades, it's time to demonstrate that the state can actually do something for the taxes that you pay, and that's the best way, at least philosophically, to bridge it. Last word, Kumar, how do we address this?
You brought in philosophy in the last phase. Most people say it's a question of character and ethics. I think it's a question of system. It's not a question of character and ethics. Character and ethics, of course, I mean, they are fundamental. But I don't think simply by urging everybody to be a persons of character and follow ethics and follow honesty, that won't work. I think systems should be such that you cannot behave in a manner which will not catch you or which will catch you. So you must be able to spend accordingly, you must be able to earn accordingly. But I think just taxing, even expanding tax net, the people who are beyond this radar altogether, those who are doing black money business, putting money there or putting money here in land and jewelry and gold, they are not on that radar of, they are completely doing business outside that.
So one of the aspects of that maybe we are expanding the discussion, is when the GST law comes, when the overall GST, that will possibly drive away the parallel income. The whole objective of that is because you will break the chain. In order to get a credit, you have to have buying from a legitimate source on which you have paid the GST. So one of the key benefits of GST possibly would be to an extent remove the parallel economy, because that will completely disincentivize.
But in America, when you go, they tell us, if we buy something, that do you want to buy from an Indian shop or an American shop? And invariably you say it depends on price. And he says, no, here it will be something like $20 more or $20 less. And then you buy, because the only reason he gives, he doesn't pay sales tax. He asks you, do you want receipt? Price will be $20 more. Even for a simple thing like bag. So I think even in America, openly, if you don't ask for a receipt, you are paying, actually creating unaccounted money.
So the point is that people need to put pressure?
So system should be such that you cannot do this.
Okay.
But the fact that you are able to do this, even in countries like United States, here it is completely open sky.
Right. Okay. So any last point, Uday, before we close?
No, I think.
Okay. So this is the last one. Okay. So there is a fundamental, there are some fundamental philosophical issues which need to be addressed, but there are also some technical legal issues that need to be addressed. And I think we started by saying that we are in a situation where we are in a mood to solve some of these problems.
Yes.
And there is an SIT sitting at least to address the black money issue, which if that is addressed, a lot of things happen downstream as well. I think that's what we are hoping for, legislatively and otherwise. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. That's all we have time for on this special Boom News Business Standard India Hangout. We'll be back very soon.